Good morning, Rabbi Isai. We're holding 13 lines from the bottom. When an animal falls, you have to check the entire digestive system, the whole intestines. Start from the entire length of the spine and all the ribs. You got to check to make sure there's no internal damage. If the animal falls 10 tefachim, we have to be concerned that there's damage. What about the trachea and the esophagus, the kana and the veshet? The animal fell. Do we have to be concerned that maybe it popped out of place? You don't have to worry about it. They are in good shape. They're very strong. They withstand a fall. That's not the issue. I guess you can see also, like in a human beings that fall, what breaks? Their hip, their ribs. You never really hear that the guy's esophagus popped out of place. You know what I'm saying? So the esophagus is pretty good. For me, this is one of the most interesting Gemaras I've seen in a long time. Because now we're going to discuss when a bird falls on a certain material. Now, the idea is, and the Gemara says all the way at the end, that there's two types of fall. There's ways to jump off a 2-story building. You know, you jump and you you try to absorb the fall. Now, if you can absorb the fall in a better way, they tell you roll, I don't know what, different things. If you were to jump off a 2-story building, but on an angle, it'll be a lot better. Let's say you hit a wall that has an angle to it, it'll be a lot better. It'll absorb the fall a lot more than if you fall straight on a piece of concrete. That's the whole sugi here. That's the end of the day. Anything that is slippery and that it's not going to give a jolt like that. But what's the pella? Why do I say it's one of the most interesting sugyas? The Gemara gives 27 examples of different things that a bird could fall on. That's our sugya. So it's easy. It flies. You just have to understand what these things are. I don't know all these 27. You'll help me out a little bit. And we're going to go weiter. Omar, Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel. Oiv shenechbad al pnei hamayim. Most of us, some of us are scared of water. Most of us try to dive into the water once in a while, and you do a little bit of a belly flap. Ooh, wow, does it hurt? So what if a bird with its wings tied fell onto the water? I guess these are all things that happen. These are common materials that birds fall on. Interesting. So as long as I could swim one bird's length, so he showed that he's not a nefula, he's not a risuk, he doesn't have crushed organs. He's able to move. We're going to see later on if an animal stands up, if an animal walks, these are all signs that he's okay. He doesn't have any internal damage. And this is only a bird who was able to swim from downstream upstream, against the flow of the water, upwards. But if he swam from up down, that's nothing. That's not a raya. He was floating and he happened to make his way downstream. Big deal. And if the water is stagnant, it's just staying, it's not going anywhere, less lamba. But what's interesting is that Rashi says in this case that even if you went upstream, even if you went down, but I thought it's kaimi, it's staying. So the Beis Yosef talks about it. He says the water is moving slightly, and he doesn't have to prove himself that he went upstream, because it's barely moving, so for a bird it's nothing. Let's say you have a leaf, you have a piece of floating wood on the water, so now you know the speed of the water, but he's vikadme, he swam quicker than the wood, so he's going downstream. We said he has to swim upstream. But look at the detail, the amount of detail, it's crazy. So he really has to prove himself by swimming upstream. But he could also prove himself swimming downstream if he's quicker than the floating things on the water. Floating things are going 5 miles an hour, he's going 10 miles an hour, so obviously you see that he's capable. Okay. Glima Matiach Chashinon. Here's a Glima Matiach. This is a real story. This is not made up. This is not AI. So that's a Glima Matiach. Is this Matiach? If it's taut and the bird fell into it, broken. So if it's taut, You know, like these guys, you saw they're professionals. There was a little bit of a stomach in that blanket. It gave it a little bit of, it absorbed. Chashinon means we have to be concerned that it's broken bones. If it's not taut, loy chashinon. Move off. If it's folded up, loy chashinon. It has a nice cushion. If the net that you're catching with it has these knots that are close together, so now you have to be concerned that he broke his bones on these knots. If the knots are further apart, you don't have to worry. I guess these are all things that they used to do back in the day. Kitna, the cotton, David betune chashinon. If it's in a bunch of bundles, it's very tough. The haigisa or the haigisa loy chashinon. So we have a nice video over here. The haigisa. Like I explained before, if the bird falls directly, this is not a good video because his wings are flapping. You know, without flapping wings, he falls on the pinnacle, on the spitz of the bale, then it will destroy his bones. But if it's on the side, so it moves a little bit, it's a little bit on slant, it absorbs more of the impact. And then we don't have to worry about his bones and everything breaking. With the Hagisa, if he falls on the slant part, loy chashinon. Yisur Yasa, we're talking about reeds, chashinon, they're very tough, so you have to be concerned. Kitna, the daig, vinopitz, if you have cotton that's pounded and combed, loy chashinon, it's soft. Daig, v'leilofitz, it was just pounded, but it wasn't combed, so it's not that soft, chashinon. David Bizrei, if small bundles, even the ikebe, kitrei, chashinon, small bundles have you tie it together, so it has knots. You have to be concerned about the knot breaking its bones. Dakto chashinon, if it's like the stuff that comes out of the cotton, the dakto loy chashinon, it's finer stuff. It's soft. Navra chashinon, it's the what? No, I didn't. Dakto chashinon, dakto loy chashinon. Navra chashinon, loy. Oh, if it's very fine, loy chashinon. Navra, those little strings on a palm tree, chashinon, they're too tough to fall on. Timchata li chashinon, but if you like split them, then they're softer. Kitma nihala chashinon. This is super interesting. Sifted ash. You have ash, sift it. You have to no, it's tough. Loy nihala. If you don't sift the ash, so it could absorb the fall. It's soft. Loy chashinon. Kabanum beis amud aleph. We're going on. We're not even there. We're at number 16. Choil hadak loy chashinon. Thin sand is not a concern. It's soft. Choil hagas, if it's heavier, it's thicker, then it could break bones. Avak drochim. In other words, don't think that he fell on sand. Sometimes sand is not very gishmak to fall on. Avak drochim chashinon. In Bnei Brak, I remember they had a truck like over here. They bought a whole pile of sand to make so kids would actually jump out of very high, like a third story, fall into the sand because it's like So that's choladak. Avak drochim chashinon. Tivna v'avid bizgo chashinon. Straw. Made a bale out of straw, so now it's a tough it's a box. Lo avid bizgo, but if you just have a whole pile of straw, lo chashinon soft. Chite v'chol deminayu chashinon. Wheat and everything that's similar to wheat, like how do you say chiffon and rye. This is Rashi. Rye. Again, anything that's similar to barley and everything that's similar, wheat and everything, they're tough. All types of, how do you say kidneys? Beans. They're softer. Lebarmin rubia, fenugreek. Peas. No, this is a type of, I guess, afuna is soft. The arbis that we eat on Shalom Zacher, those are tough. Whoever goes to Shalom Zacher knows, those are tough. Chumus. They could crush your bones. Oh, finally, after 27. Klala the milsa, here's the rule. Kolmidi the mashrik, anything that's slippery, so it absorbs more of the fall. You don't have to be concerned about rizik evar. Loi mashrik. But if it doesn't slide, yesh boy mishum risuk evarim, it has the risuk evarim. So says the Gemara like this. Here, check this out. It's unbelievable. I didn't invent this. This is in the time of the Gemara. This trick, I probably got it from here. If you put down glue on a trap and a bird's wing sticks to it and then falls down, is that risuk evarim or not? If the woodpecker would fall from the second floor down to this, is that his organs break? Do we have to be concerned? So Gemara goes through the whole thing. How many wings got stuck? Because let's say only one wing got stuck, so he has another wing that could lessen the impact. We're talking about impact. It's all about impact. On the same bale of hay, sometimes it breaks, sometimes it doesn't. If it's on the side, so over here, all you need to do is flap your wing a little bit. Maybe you lessen the impact. Okay. We're going to see a mandama that says one wing doesn't work really. It barely does anything. Okay, so let's see. Real Davok. Dibuk, Davok. Ravashi Shari. If a bird falls down on a glue trap, he's stuck, his wings are stuck, he is also according to Ameimar Ravashi, it's not a problem. Bechad Gapa, if the problem is one wing got stuck, the other wing is like the mouse. How did the mouse make it to my bed? Because only two of its feet got stuck on the glue trap, the other two were off, and he kept on moving until he got to my bed. One wing is not the end of the world. He has one wing to lessen the impact. The machlokes is two wings. How is he going to stop his fall? And we'll all think so. So what's the other tzad to say that it's okay? So let's say this is a wing, and the wing is stuck in the glue, but you still have the rest of the wing that he can move. It's not the whole wing is stuck. The ends of it are stuck on the glue, but from where the bone, the wing attaches itself to the body, it can still move a little bit. That moving lessens the impact. Some learn it. 2 wings stuck to the glue trap. Everybody agrees that it's usher. He has no way out of this. He's just like a human being falling off a 5-story building. He can't flap anything. Flap your hands. It's going to help you. Keep ligi b'chad gapa. But there is a machlokes in one wing. He could fly a little bit with one wing, and therefore it lessens the impact. And the one who says that it's usher, there's risik ivarim, there's broken bones. Given the Bahaylu Matzi Baruch, I don't know exactly how it works, but I could assume a bird flies with 2 wings, and when one doesn't work, then the other one also doesn't fly. It's not a thing. By Nami Matzi Baruch, the other one is not doing much at all. Not like in our video that he has like a nice descent down. The halacha is when there are 2 wings stuck to the glue trap, the animal has broken bones. No, there is in fact a lessening of the impact when there's 1 wing attached. So now we have a whole sugya about ribs. Lucky us, we have crazy artists who made this a lot more enjoyable for us. So it says in the Mishnah, if most of its ribs were broken. Now, how many ribs need a break? What's roiv? So an animal actually has 26 ribs. So roiv would be 14, maybe. But that's not the roiv. Roiv is 12. Why? Because we don't care about 2 of the ribs on each side. We don't care about the 2 red ones. Why don't we care about the 2 red ones? According to one pshat, okay, we're just going simple, make it easy. Rashi, these 2, they don't have marrow. They're without bone marrow. So they're not, they look like everything else, but they're not. So we're left with 11. All the white ones. So what's the majority of 11? 6. Now, you don't have to have 6 on each side. As long as you have 12 total broken ribs, you can put all of them on one side, all 11 on one side, and 1 on the other side. That's like 12. You can do 6 and 6. You can do it any way you want, as long as 12 are broken from all of these. What part of the rib? See, the rib goes all the way around. So it needs to be the upper part. Great. Let's see inside. Torah Rabbanon, Elim Roiv Tzlois, Sheish Mikan v'Sheish Mikan, 6 on the other side. Oyachas Yisrei Mikan, V'Achas Mikan, 11 on one side, 1 on the other side. Amaziri Umechsen Klapi Shidra. Here, take a look over here. 11. They break on the upper part. You see, there's even a purple line over there. From that line, let's call it, that's the halfway, from that line up. That's where it has to break. That, where the ribeye is. Oh, v'simanach ribeye. Okay, great. We're talking about not the red guys, we're talking about the large ones that have marrow. Omar Ula says, Ben Zakkai said, Nekru, B'roiv tzad echad. There's a difference between breaking and uprooting, detached completely. There's more to pictures here. Here's a tsela that's detached. They fit nicely into a ball, into a socket. It's a ball and socket. And if it pops out, that's worse than breaking, because now it has zero support. At least what? So if nekar, b'roiv tzadechad, all you need is 6, a total of 6 on one side. Nishtabru is less severe. If they break, b'roiv shnei zdadim, then you need a total of 12, not 6. Says Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan Omar, bein nekru, bein nishtabru, b'roiv shnei zdadim. No, says Rabbi Yochanan, doesn't matter if they were uprooted, popped out completely, broken. You need a majority 12 broken or uprooted. Omer Rav. And here we start a beautiful sugya. So step 1 in the sugya is Rav. Rav says something very simple. 1 uprooted rib, but with the vertebrae, this animal is a goner, treif. 1. Omer Rav, nekrat tzela v'chulya ima. Something like this. The whole vertebrae is gone over here. Okay, so Rav, what does Rav say? He says 1 plus the chulya, the vertebrae. There's a spine issue, treifa. It's a treifa automatically. Amri lei Rav Kahana v'Ravasi l'Rav. So the two Talmidim ask Rav, what if you have 2 nekra tzela mikan v'tzela mikan from both sides, and they're opposing each other? They're twins. They're on the same vertebrae, but on both sides. The chulya kayemes, but you Rav, we wouldn't ask you about 2 because you said 1 is no good. But 1 with the spine, with the whole vertebrae. I'm saying the vertebrae is in place, but 2 ribs popped out of their sockets, they're gone. What's the halacha? Chulya kayemes ma'u. Omar lo, he said to them, Gistur kamritu. What you're just describing is an animal that's sliced in half. It's an avela. Oh. So basically, he said when it's missing ribs from the pair, we'll call them a pair. What are we going to call them? The 2 ribs together from both sides. They meet in the middle. When they're both gone, then think about it. The animal has a bunch of a few inches with no rib, and the whole body's going to twist and turn. It's not a stable animal. It's a gistra. Ask the Gemara of Rav Nami Gistra Kalmar. It's a beautiful sugi. You just have to hold cup over here. Rav says, when he says that the vertebrae is gone, isn't that a gistra? He says 1 vertebrae is gone with 1 rib. But guess what? If there's no vertebrae, then both ribs are worthless. So it's also a gistra. His case of 1 vertebrae missing actually means 2 ribs are missing as well. Automatically, the 2 ribs don't mean anything. Even if they're there and they didn't move, they're not there, halachically. No. So we're a typical classic Gemara. We're going to try to wiggle our way out of it until we're stuck, and then we're going to come out with the pshat. Maybe Rav meant that the rib is missing, but the vertebrae is in place. That's impossible. He says mafurish that the vertebrae is missing. So don't try to tell me that the vertebrae is in place. Okay, but what I could try to do is I'll say tzela v'chatzi chulya. And that's what I'm going to stay with. Everybody's happy with that. Rav didn't mean literally that the whole entire vertebrae went missing. He meant to say that part of the vertebrae is missing here, like this. So what does this? What does this help me? This helps me that it's not a gistra. It's not an animal split in half. It has some support on the other side. It's intact. This part of the chulya is broken. Okay, if that's the case. Obviously, if they're asking, if Rav said that a half a vertebrae is missing, a half vertebrae and 1 rib is missing, what does Rav say? Treif, gone. So his Talmidim would never ask him, and what about 2? Yeah, Yishkoyach. If 1 is no good, so 2 is also treifa. So what did they ask? Why did they ask 2? They're saying, but the vertebrae is intact. What happens if 2 ribs are missing and the vertebrae is 100% in good shape? What's the halacha? On that he told them, Gister Kamritu. That's considered a split animal. Ask the Gemara, how could that be? How can you tell me that if 2 ribs are missing, that's called an animal that's split in half? V'amar Ula, Ben Zaki Omar, we just read it. And Zakkai says, Nekru beroiv tzadecha nishtab beroiv b'shnei tzdadim. If you're talking about this case that they popped out of place, it's not 2 that makes it treif. You need roiv. Yeah, roiv. You need a lot more. You need at least 6 missing, not 2. Or, says the Gemara, when do you need a roiv? When they are lined up nicely, these ribs are missing, you need 6 missing ribs because they're not on opposite sides. But when you have a pair, that's terrible. Even 2 is worse than 6, or worse than 5, I should say. 5 missing, they're in order, fine. See, you're missing a bunch of ribs. But when you have 2 ribs that are opposite each other, they're a pair, that's a terrible thing. That's what Rav Kahana and Rav Asi were talking about. That's a different case. That's the Gemara, but that's also not a good shot. Why? Rabbi Yochanan says 12 are missing. Listen to this. Let me show it to you over here, and you'll see how beautiful this is. Rabbi Yochanan says that 12 ribs are missing, 6 from each side. Even if you do 6 from each side, you're going to have 1 overlapping because it's 11 on each side. If you take 6 out of 11 on the bottom and 6 out of 11 on the top, that's roiv. He says you need at least 12 broken. 1 of them is going to be overlapping. So what in the world are Rav Kahana and Rav Asi adding to the question? Rav Yochanan says you need 12 ribs missing, so they asked, but what if they're overlapping? What if they're facing each other? Rabbi Yochanan spoke about a case that 2 are facing each other, because there's no other way. It doesn't matter if you put all 11 on the bottom and 1 on the top. 1 of them is going to be overlapping. The one on top is going to be overlapping. Very simple, no? The math is beautiful. You need to have 6 on each side. It's impossible that you don't have a situation where one is against facing the other. So what was the question that Rav Kahana and Rav Asi had? Says Gemara Hasan Buchna Beloy Asisa. Hacha Buchna Vasisa. First of all, the words. This is pestle and mortar, right? You go like this. You put the. So this is the socket, and this is the ball. And it goes in like that. So one case is Rav Kahana and Rav Asi were asking when the socket and the ball both broke. Everything broke. Which is, you should be asking yourself, so that makes no sense, because that's what Rav was talking about. We already established, Rav, the Rebbe, spoke about 1 rib broken with a little bit that popped off the vertebrae. So then why would Rav Kahana and Rav Asi ask about a question of two ribs with a broken or missing vertebrae? That's the Gemara's next question. But he says, Rabbi Yochanan was talking about that the ribs popped out nicely like this. So that's why you need 12. Rav Kahana, Rav Asi, we're talking about this case. 2 of them that broke the vertebrae. See, there's a piece of vertebrae on the rib. That's what they were asking. So 2 is worse than 12 because the broken rib, broken chulya. As Gemara, the Rav. Rav didn't really speak about a complete missing chulya, Taisa says, but it doesn't matter. He said even in a situation where part of the vertebrae broke off, one is treif. So why are you asking me about the same exact case? 2. Says the Gemara. The Rav. They asked the question because they had no idea. They had no idea that Rav said that one is a problem. Again, what does Rav say? 1 rib missing, but the vertebrae broke off with it. Treif. They come along and they ask Rav, the Rebbe, Rebbe, what about 2 ribs that have they broke off a piece of the chulya? I already said 1 is no good when it has a broken vertebrae. So certainly 2 is no good. The Gemara says no, they never heard that he said that halach. That's what they asked him. Now you have to ask yourself though, time out. If you were a Talmud and you were asking your Rebbe a question about a missing rib with a broken vertebrae, would you ask him, Rebbe, what's the halach about 1? Or you would jump and say, what's the halach about 3 broken ribs? Which one would you do? 1. You start off slow. You ask 1. So why would they jump? They never heard anything about ribs with broken vertebrae. So they asked him about 2. Why don't they ask him about 1? Makes a lot more sense. Rebbe, 1 rib with a broken vertebrae, is that treif or not? No, they didn't ask him that. They said, Rebbe, 2 ribs with 2 broken. Why would they ask him that? So the Gemara says, we'll say about pet. Listen to this. It's a nice cheshbon. It's a riddle. It's a riddle. Here's the riddle. You have one question to ask your Rebbe. The Rav is very, very busy. The whole generation is there. So Rebbe Eliashiv, you can just imagine 100 people in line. You can't drive him crazy. You have to ask him one question in out. Think before you ask the proper question. You want to know all halachas. So if you ask him about one vertebrae that's broken with the one vertebrae with the rib, and he answers you it's kosher, you'll never know what about two. And if he says treif, then you will know. He says treif, so certainly two. Great. But what if he says it's kosher? And I only have one question. It's a riddle. It's one of those riddles. The guy's in the room and you don't know and you have to ask. You have one. But if he asks about two, then I can figure it out. How? If he says it's kosher, then 1, 2, 3, 4, they're all kosher. But if he says it's treif, then I know two is treif. But how will I know one is treif? Oh, I will know one is treif because the way he answers it. If he's annoyed at me and he says two is treif, that means, of course, one, because one is also treif. So what do you ask me about two? So he says it with a little bit of anger in his voice. You have to read the body language. It's not just the words that come out of his mouth. You say, Rebbe, is two ribs missing with the vertebrae broken off? Is that kosher or not? He says, it's treif. Meaning, one is treif. So of course, two is treif. But that's only if if you have one question to ask, you have to ask about two. So ask the Gemara, why don't he ask the question of Rav's case? What's Rav's case? One rib, one missing vertebrae. Savri, so they said, there's only 4 more lines to the sugya, then we're going to very easy stuff. They said, we're going to ask one question and we're going to have 2 answers from that. We would ask, what's the halach about one rib missing with a vertebrae missing? If you told us this is treifa, great. Then I'll know for there, everything else is treif. But the problem is, if he says one rib that's broken off with the vertebrae is kosher, and there's a big chance he'll say that, just also the respect they had for him. It's like we're not on his level. We talk with complete fear. If he says that it's kosher, I won't know what to do with two. And I have to ask another question. I can't do that. Ihachi Hashanami asks the Gemara, but it doesn't make sense what you're saying. Hashanami, the Kabbai Minei Tarti, they ask him about two. Hanicha, that's great. In Yom Aluk Sheira, it's kosher. So one is kosher, two is certainly. If two is kosher, one is certainly kosher, and everything else is kosher. But what happens if he says two is treif, which we know is treif? I won't know. What about one? Maybe one is kosher, one broken off. You have to read his body language. You have to read his word, how he says it. He would be very mad and he would say, what are you asking me a question about two? One is treif. Of course two is treif. He wouldn't say it like that, but he'd say, two is treif. But that didn't work. That trick didn't work. There's no body language. Rav answered, but what? No, the Gemara says, no. If you think about what Rav said. He did. He said it. We was annoyed at them. He said, "What you're saying, that's a case of gistera." He said it like, "Oh, it's gistera." Like, what are you asking me? That's an animal that's broken in half. Think about it. That was a little bit of more than treif. He could have said treif. He didn't say treif. He said, "Oh, it's a gistera." Oh, that means one is treif. What are you asking me about two? Two is a animal that's cut in half. Next sugya, Rabbis. Here we go. If you remember in the Mishnah on Daf Mem Beis, I can't believe it. It's already 10 days ago. We're still in this parak. We're having a lot of fun with this parak. It says in the Mishnah there's 18 treifas. Ask the Gemara, but there's more than 18, and that's where we introduced the word shav shmaitza. There's another 7. So now we're going to talk about 3 out of the 7. And who said that? Halacha Shmuel. Shmuel is the one that mentioned the shav shmaitza. It says, or part of it. Omar Rav Rashila, Omar Rav Masa, Omar Shmuel. Says Shmuel, here's 3 of them. There's another 3 treifas that are not mentioned in the Mishnah. Nekra tsela mikara, if a rib was uprooted from the root. Mamish like this, uprooted. Or a skull that was bashed in, somebody took a bat, whacked it on the head, and most of it, 51% of the skull is broken. The Gemara is going to describe what part of the skull is 51%. And the stomach, the bottom part of the animal, roiv. Here, just to hear this. You see, this is the basar chavis roiv, that red. That's the meat that covers, let's just, for argument's sake, that covers, it's the outside meat, but it covers the intestines. Okay. So says the Gemara, treifa. These three are treifa. If you tell me one rib popped out of its socket, it's treifa. We had this sugya, when you have a dead person in a room, it's matama the whole room, betuma soil. What if you have just a skull or just a spine? Also, the spine, a whole spine. But what if the spine is missing two vertebrae? That it gives tumah, gives red to the entire room. A spine also gives tumah. But if you have two vertebrae missing, there's no tumah in the room. One vertebrae missing. So who's more machmir here? Bishama is more machmir. Why? They say that the tumah, the red, keeps on spreading and spreading unless you remove a lot. If you remove a little, just one vertebrae, it continues to spread. So there will be tumah in this room up until a point where you take two vertebrae out, or you started with two vertebrae less, I should say. Akoparim, they're more machmir. Here's Shmuel again. Shmuel says that this same machlokes, we had this, remember 10 days ago. This same machlokes applies to treif. In other words, if you have an animal that's missing one vertebrae, you could eat it. It's not a treifa. If it's missing two vertebrae, then it becomes a treifa. All of a sudden, in the case of treifa, the same bishamai, who are machmir by tumah, they're makel by eating, because you can eat it up until you have two full vertebrae missing. Akopanim, what do you see from here? If you don't have vertebrae, you don't have a vertebrae, you don't have ribs. So you need at least one whole vertebrae missing, which means two ribs missing, according to Basil. And according to Shama, you need two vertebrae, which is four ribs missing. So how are you telling me one rib missing is a treifa, when in fact the minimum is two ribs missing? Says Gemara, there's a big difference. We're talking about ribs missing without the vertebrae versus a vertebrae missing without ribs. How's that possible? I could hear that you have ribs missing without a vertebrae. They popped out. How do you have a vertebrae missing without ribs? If the vertebrae is missing, then the ribs are missing. No, b'shili kafle. It's at the end of the spine. The end of the spine here, like something like this. Once the ribs are, they stop the ribs, and then you have all these bones right over here. These guys, those are vertebrae without ribs. Why is this not mentioned in the list of things that Bishamai say it's a kula? That what? You could eat an animal, it's not treif, up until more vertebrae are missing than Beisilel. So that's a bigger kula. Says the Gemara. Rav, you're right, it is a kula, but this whole sugya of missing vertebrae was said by the tumah soil, and that's why over there in that sugya it's a chumrah. You're right. If you flip it, it becomes a kula in the halachas of treifa, but it wasn't said in the halachas of treifa. Shmuel is the one that made the comparison from the halachas of tumah to the halachas of treifa, but it was said in the halachas of treifa in tumah, and therefore it turns out the bishamai are the machmir in that case. Bishamai, the chumrah. You have a skull that was crushed mostly. Teku, I don't know. What does it mean? Real quickly, roiv goiva means you make a line by the eyes and you measure upwards. 51% of that blue line, the arrow, that's roiv goiva. Or roiv keva means you take a measuring tape and you do the circumference around the entire head, and 51% of that, I don't know if it's the height or the width, so to speak, teku. And if you have a roiv cut from that meat on the bottom of the stomach, that's a treifa. So here's a picture. This is a tear, a majority tear in that meat, and here's most of it missing. It went missing. Which one does it mean? Missing? 51% missing or 51% tear? Says Gemara, I could prove it. Now, let's go back. Do you remember who's the one that said the Chef Shmaitza? Shmuel is the one that says Shef Shmaitza. So let me bring a raya. Then what? You also have to recall from 2 days ago, we had 7 pshatim what a keres pnimi means, and then we know what a chitzayni means. Keres pnimi, we had 7 pshatim. One a tefach closest to the keres, where the hair started. One said the entire keres, a whole thing. So one of the pshatim was, it's not keres pnimi shenikva oy shenikra. It says over here, it ripped. There was a little puncture in the pnimi, but the outer one was completely was torn. It doesn't say nital. That was our question. Is it removed or torn? Over here it says torn. Now let me prove to you that it's talking about our case. They say What's keres pnimi? One of the 7 pshatim is it's the entire keres. So if keres pnimi is the entire keres, what does keres chitzayni mean? It's not even referring to the keres. Again, what's keres? It's just when an animal eats, it goes into a pouch called a keres, the first stomach. The second stomach is basic kaises, third hemses, fourth keva. This keres, pnimi means the entire keres. So what's chitzayni? It's not even referring to the keres. It's referring to the meat that's on the outside of the keres. And that meat, it says oishinikra. It tore. So what's the raya? It's not that it's removed. It's a raya to this, that it's this case right over here, and not this, because it says it was torn. Says the Gemara, wait a minute, there was 7 pshatim over there. Who said this pshat? Shmuel or somebody else? Somebody else. Guess what? Shmuel says his own pshat. We're trying to prove one of the Shef Shmaitzes. In the Shef Shmaitzes, is it a rip or is it missing? It's a rip because somebody else said a pshat in Keres HaChitzoy means that it doesn't fit, it doesn't go with Shmuel. We're trying to figure out Shmuel. Shmuel was the one that said a place that doesn't have any wool, like little lumps over there. We got to do this little sugi and then we'll finish. Says Rav, it says in the Mishnah that a wolf and a lion, it brings us a lion, but a wolf has venom in its nails. Some learn pshat, it means bacteria. Some learn literally, it has venom in its nails. Says Rav, when it comes to a larger animal, you're talking about, let's say, a cow. So any animal larger than a zev, according to most Rishonim, the Rosh argues, but according to a lot of Rishonim, it means what's larger than a wolf? A hyena, a leopard, a bear. Lion. Certainly a lion for sure, even the Rosh agrees to, because that's in the Mishnah. All these have venom. Limudei mai? I'm sorry? When it comes to birds, anything larger than a hawk. Here's a hawk. Limudei mai. So it says, from a wolf and up. It's coming to exclude a cat. Tanino Drus Hazev. It says Mefurish, only a wolf and up. A cat is much smaller than a wolf. Maybe no, it means also the Zev Begasa Nami Doris. That a wolf is capable of inserting venom and inflicting a treifa to a larger animal. So in other words, and not a cat, Votnan, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Drus Zev Bedako, Drus Ari Begasa. It's not true that a wolf is in a smaller animal and a larger animal is not a wolf, only a larger predator like a lion. Rabbi Yehuda is not coming to explain the Mishnah, but he's arguing. We have a mandama that says Rabbi Yehuda came to explain. Says Gemara, so what if he said that it's coming to explain? I hold it's not coming to explain. I argue on Rabbi Yehuda. I say that Rabbi Yehuda comes to argue. It's coming to exclude a cat, that a cat cannot inflict damage to a sheep and a goat, that sort of thing. The reason why I mentioned wolf, because wolf is famous. Wolf actually do kill sheep, not so much cats. And I think a cat is also something that can inflict damage to sheep. No, only a wolf and up inflict damage. Rabbi Sai, have a wonderful day.
Merit the schus of spreading Torah throughout the world. Sponsor a shir today. MDYsponsor.com or sponsor at MDY.com.